Chapter 14. Every Rose Has a Thorn. The weekend passed in a blur. Dawn was awakened each night by terrible nightmares of ravens attacking her and that horrible voice calling her criminal. She hid out in her bedroom or wore the vintage sunglasses everywhere she went, even inside the house, hoping to protect her aunts. Her aunts no longer rose early in the morning, but slept later and later each day. And when they woke, they were tired and not their usual cheerful selves. So on Sunday, Dawn crept out of the house to get as far away from them as possible. Wearing the sunglasses, she wandered through the walled garden, taking in the fresh roses. She ran her fingers along the soft petals, then smelled them and sneezed, of course. "Hey there, stranger," a voice echoed out, surprising her. Dawn spun around. "Woof!" Samson clomped up to her with his big tongue flopping. Philippa sat on her bike. Dawn relaxed, though fear still curdled in her stomach. She felt, cursed. But she was also grateful for the company. What's with those weird old glasses?" Philippa asked, scrunching up her nose. Dawn was afraid that if she took them off, Philippa would fall asleep. "They're from the shop. I thought I'd try out a new look. Something more, vintage." "Vintage? What, you don't like it?" Dawn asked. "It's not that," Philippa said. "More like it doesn't really go with your look. All those hip city clothes." She motioned at Dawn's designer jeans, new sneakers, and black top with cutouts. "Ugh, I know," Dawn said, "but I can't take them off." "Why not?" Philippa said with a frown. "It's not even that bright out today." Dawn braced herself, then confessed. "'Cause if I do, then you'll fall asleep," she said quickly. "Like what happened to that shopkeeper in the corner store." "That has you worried?" Philippa said with a snort laugh. "Mr. Crowley is always dozing off like that. When we go over to his farms so Pops can watch the Braves games, he always passes out. He even calls baseball his nap time." "Look, I'm serious," Dawn said, feeling the heavy glasses perched on her nose. "You won't be able to stay awake if you look in my eyes." A cold wind stirred up in the forest and whisked their way, making Dawn shiver. She wrapped her arms around her chest to kindle some warmth. "Listen, I won't fall asleep," Philippa said. "Try me. I had a good night's sleep. Though I did have weird dreams about evil fairies and princes and fire-breathing dragons, but it's probably that new fantasy book I snagged at the library. Do it already." Dawn bit her lip, but she wouldn't take the glasses off. "I promise I won't fall asleep," Philippa said, dragging her hand across her chest. "Cross my heart and hope to die." "Ugh, that's what I'm afraid of," Dawn said. "It's not funny." Philippa turned more serious. "Well, we might as well test it out, so you can stop acting so weird and we can have some actual fun today. Worst case, you can wake me up, right?" Before Dawn could protest again, Philippa swiped the sunglasses from her face. "Samson, keep away," she said, tossing them to the dog. He trotted off with his prize, thrilled to have a new toy to carry around and show off to anyone who crossed paths with him. Dawn shut her eyes and held her breath, expecting Philippa to fall asleep on her feet. She waited for the familiar sound of snoring, but it stayed quiet. Slowly, she cracked her eyes open, but nothing happened. Philippa stayed wide awake and alert. Their eyes met, and Dawn held her gaze just to be sure. She stared in Philippa's eyes for another long minute, but her friend didn't even so much as yawn. "See? I'm awake," Philippa said. But Dawn's heart still beat faster than normal. So far, Philippa was the only person who seemed immune to the sleeping curse. But would it last? Dawn pushed that thought away and forced a smile. So, why'd you come over? She asked. I wasn't expecting you. Well, you did rush out of the shop the other day, Felipa said. Guess I was worried. Now you're freaking out about me falling asleep. Everything okay? Yeah, I've just been missing home and my friends, Dawn said. She hadn't texted Ronnie and Daniela in the last few days. Now she was the bad friend. It wasn't a lie exactly, more like an exaggeration, but she still couldn't tell Felipa the truth. I made a deal with a dark fairy and she put a sleeping curse on me so that everyone I look at falls asleep. Anyone would think she wasn't making any sense, and Dawn couldn't exactly blame them. Felipa narrowed her eyes. Dawn knew she could tell that wasn't the whole truth. Not even close. But Felipa let it go, instead turning toward the rose garden. Wow, I heard there was a maze here, she said, gazing at the towering hedges peppered with red rose blossoms. The entrance was an arched trellis. Must be super fun. It's not that fun, Dawn said, feeling naked without the sunglasses. She'd been wearing them non-stop for the last few days, and it's really easy to get lost in. My first day, my aunts had to come and rescue me. Felipa laughed. I still think it sounds awesome. I bet with my help, we could find our way. Plus, Samson always knows the way home. He can lead us out, right? Despite her friend's company, Dawn felt anxious and afraid. A chilly wind whipped out again, but this time it came whistling out of the maze. It gave Dawn a bad feeling, but then... Tag, you're it, Felipa said, tapping her shoulder and taking off. Samson let out a happy bark and plowed after his owner. Wait, come back, Dawn yelled. But Felipa vanished into the maze with Samson and her sunglasses in tow. Even though she hated the maze, she couldn't let her friend go back in there alone. With great trepidation, Dawn passed under the archway. She could hear Felipa's spirited giggles and Samson's barking coming from deeper inside the maze. Hey, no fair, Dawn called out. You got a head start. Wait up! But the wind stole her voice, and the deeper into the maze she went, the stronger it grew. There was a flash and a crack. Storm clouds began to swirl overhead, but Dawn tried to ignore them. The maze became darker and colder as she wound her way between the hedges, circling further into the labyrinth. She shivered. Suddenly, ravens swarmed in the sky, blacking out the sun. Caw, caw! She didn't hear Felipa or Samson anymore. That worried her. Felipa, come on, Dawn said. Stop goofing around and playing tricks on me. There's a big storm coming. Let's go. Lightning pulsed, then thunder rumbled and shook the ground. Rain quickly soaked Dawn. She hurried under an archway for shelter. The rain pummeled her anyway. It was cold and she shivered uncontrollably. It's not funny anymore, she called to Felipa. Please, let's go back. But then, something pricked her skin. No, more like stabbed it. Dawn spun around right as the rose vines shot out and grabbed her. They wrapped around her body, pulling her into their thick hedges. She cried out in pain, trying to wrench herself free, but they held her tight. No, let me go, she screamed. They bound her wrists behind her, cutting off the circulation as they pulled her further into the hedge. Razor-sharp thorns poked out of the brush, ready to slice through her skin, maybe even slit her throat. Dawn struggled harder, but the vines just constricted in response. She felt something wrap around her neck. The end of a vine was in front of her face, positioned as if it was staring right at her. Then, without warning, it snaked down her throat, just like in her horrible nightmare. She couldn't breathe or even scream as the vine filled up her mouth. It slithered down her throat, wriggling inside her. Lightning flashed and thunder rang out around her, and then, as if carried by the wind, an unnatural cackle echoed through the maze. "You're a disgrace to the forces of evil!"